Welcome to the Truckers Network radio show on tncradio.live, where we offer the news, weather, traffic, information, and entertainment our drivers want and need. I'm your host, Shelley Johnson. Maintaining good health is especially challenging to our drivers, and they want to learn ways to stay healthy. We like to feature experts in this area. Dr. Elizabeth Frates is a pioneer in lifestyle medicine education. She's an award-winning professor at Harvard. She has a passion for wellness. She's developed a college lifestyle medicine curriculum for the Harvard Extension School. Her focus is on teaching good nutrition, exercise prescription, and behavioral change. She's the author of the Lifestyle Medicine Handbook, an introduction to the power of healthy habits. It's listed in the 100 best medicine books of all time by Book Authority. Dr. Frates works with people to implement healthy behavioral changes. She has a program called Paving the Path to Wellness. She's with us today to talk about lifestyle medicine. Welcome, Dr. Frates. It's an honor to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Shelley. I have been looking forward to this opportunity.
I have too, because I think that your knowledge could be so helpful to our listeners. I thought we could start with maybe you telling us a little bit about what is lifestyle medicine? What is it about?
Terrific. So lifestyle medicine is a burgeoning area of medicine, and many of you have your own physicians that you hopefully visit on an annual basis. That's really important. And some of your primary care physicians will have been trained in this. Some may even be board certified. So what is this lifestyle medicine? Lifestyle medicine is utilizing physical activity, nutritious meals, sound sleep, stress resiliency, positive social connections, and avoidance of risky substances to treat, in some cases reverse, and we really want to focus on preventing chronic conditions like diabetes, coronary artery disease, heart disease, high blood pressure, obesity, and so many other conditions that are plaguing us here in the United States and, quite frankly, globally.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know our drivers end up facing a lot of those things you just mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So some of the risk factors for our number one killer, which is heart disease, and I speak of this from my heart because my own father, at the age of 52, when I was 18, did suffer a heart attack and a stroke that left him paralyzed on his left side. And this is the reason that I do what I do. It is at that time of college, when I was a freshman and economics major, I became fascinated with, well, the heart and the brain, how dad could and would make a recovery and prevent a second event. My dad was the pillar of my existence and a real mentor for me.
Mm-hmm.
So at that time, I looked into carefully what are risk factors for our number one killer in the US and worldwide, again, heart disease. He did not die. I will share the good story, which is he survived that event. And in fact, after a year of physical therapy and occupational therapy, he even made a complete recovery so that he could function fully, except for fine motor movement in his left hand.
Wow.
I'm so happy to tell that to
Yeah.
you, share that. He had a wonderful 27 more years and was able to walk me down the aisle and play with his grandkids, my children, and all the things I dreamed about having experiences with my dad. So I'm really delighted to share that. But more importantly, I feel I'm here. It's my calling. It's my duty to share everything I've learned since I was 18. I went to Harvard and studied pre-med, then Stanford in medical school, and came back to Mass General Hospital here at the Harvard system. Then I went into physical medicine and rehab to really focus in on stroke. All the work I've done is really about how we can change our lifestyles, our day-to-day habits, so that we won't fall prey to this heart disease, to chronic conditions like diabetes, obesity, even dementia.
Mm.
That's a word, memory loss and dementia, Alzheimer's. That's something that's very scary for people of all ages.
Oh, absolutely. And it seems to be more prevalent now than ever.
Yes, yes. So I was delighted when you contacted me because I do know how hard the truckers work. And I do know that one of our major risk factors for these diseases, that would be diabetes, that would be heart disease, high blood pressure, is sedentary behavior. What does that mean? Sitting.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's not just people who are driving that are sitting a lot. Now, my dad, who was a financial advisor in New York, he sat a lot. He sat probably more than the trucker sat. He just sat. He sat in his office and he looked at the numbers and his calculator, and he sat for hours and hours at a time and probably didn't take a break. So truckers are definitely at risk because of the duty they have to sit and to be responsible for this enormous vehicle and everything, the precious cargo that's in the back. So they do need to sit. Fortunately, they can take breaks. And I guess what I'm here to say is to focus in on those breaks. What are you doing during those breaks? When I'm talking to CPAs, accountants, and even physicians who are researchers, and they're sitting again extended periods of time, but not driving a truck, but they are sitting similar amounts of time. What do they do in their break? So what does the trucker do in his or her break? And we can talk about how we can use that time so that it can be valuable time for your body and your mind. One of the best things you can possibly do during that time is walk. I know that, rough and tough people, cowboys, truckers, walking isn't real exercise. And a lot of people that were football players and basketball players and soccer players, baseball players, they don't look at walking as any real exercise. But I am here to tell you there's a lot of research that will show you even 500 steps. If you can get 500 steps in while you're on your break, and this could be in place, this could be around a truck stop. This, if you're fortunate enough to be able to park somewhere and get into a hiking trail, that's probably unlikely, but let's just say if you could, or if you're home on a weekend or sometime where you can get to a hiking trail, there are benefits to being in nature too. But just the act of taking 500 steps, that alone, I'm here to share with you, will be powerful for your health.
How do you know it's 500 steps? Not all of the drivers would necessarily have a device that will tell them. Is there a visual? What's the
Brilliant.
distance?
Brilliant question, Shelley. So it is one lap around a track, so a quarter
Okay.
mile.
Quarter mile. Okay.
I'll do something even simpler for you. If you don't have a pedometer, a lot of phones actually have an app where you can turn on pedometer. But if you don't have these things and we don't want to turn that on, that's fine. I would say 10 minutes of walking, even
Okay.
5 minutes of walking, 5 minutes. If you can get up to 10, terrific, but 5 minutes of walking. So just walking in place, walking around again, the truck stop, 5 minutes. If you did that every single time you stopped, this would do your body tremendous good. There's research that shows 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes of walking will reduce your state of anxiety. Not the trait that you carry, but the state you're in, the current mood that you have. If you're really frustrated, if something happens, maybe you're listening to a show and it's annoying, or someone's called you and said something that's disturbing, or you're replaying something
Or
from the
somebody cuts you off in traffic.
brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, exactly. What can you do? One of the best things you can do is first of all, take a few deep breaths, because that's in the moment what we need to do. And stress reduction, if you recall, was one of our 6 pillars. And so learning the power of the breath, I would say, is the second most important lesson for today. The walking, is great. So you can walk it off, walk the steam off when you can pull over, and this will help you physiologically. In the moment, though, for example, I also talk to surgeons, and they're in the moment during their surgery. They, like you, can't just walk it off because they're in the middle of a very challenging mental activity, driving a huge rig or doing surgery on someone else.
Sure.
So the deep breathing. I don't know if you all are aware of the power. It's like a switch. If you take a deep breath in and then a long, long exhalation. So it would be like, and a really forceful exhalation.
Hmm.
And you do this 4 or 5 times, you can turn on what's called the parasympathetic system. Just call it the rest and digest system. You can turn on the rest and digest system, which turns off the fight or flight. Now, people get in trouble behind the wheel. These are, of course, car drivers that are going, truckers perhaps too, but I see the people behind the wheel of their cars and having road rage. So if everybody could, instead of getting out of the car and screaming at another, take 5 to 10 deep breaths together. Just try to imagine people getting out of their car, looking at each other and say, deep breathing time.
That's
And
right. Wouldn't that be good? All
it'd be so good.
right,
No,
everybody on the count of right.
honestly.
Yeah.
And if you have a partner in your truck, you can remind each other of this and even lead the other through this. If you're not the driver and you haven't been the one honked at, or someone pulled right in front of you, you're in the passenger seat at this time. You can say, "Hey, remember that Dr. Frates said 10 deep breaths? Let's do that together."
Hmm.
And I do this to protect yourself, of course, because you're driving a rig, so you have a lot at stake there. Also your cargo, but I'm really doing this to protect you, the driver, your brain and your body. Because when the sympathetic system is in charge, cortisol courses through your veins, epinephrine, and this is actually going to end up doing damage to your body long term. So I want to share with you that if you can turn the switch by taking these 5 to 10 deep breaths and you flip the switch to rest and digest, you can avoid this cortisol coursing through your body. I want to share that cortisol is a great fat storage hormone, and it really changes the milieu of your physiology to allow for weight gain. So if we're not able to move around a lot, and we are sitting, again, either because we're behind the computer or we're behind a wheel, then we really need to think about ways to enhance our metabolism so that we won't end up gaining weight. And it is excessive weight that also puts us at risk for heart disease and high blood pressure and
Sure.
diabetes. I will share my dad. He was a fit guy up until college, and then he started his workaholic financial advising, and he would fall into the BMI category of overweight or even obese by BMI. So these things they spiral if we don't take steps, and that's the other reason why it'd be great for you to walk 5 to 10 minutes or about 500 steps every time you stop the rig, because this will help you to manage weight as well.
Makes sense. Well, when you think about it as children, we're always
Mhm.
running around. We never sit. And that's one of the biggest challenges for children. Sit still. Oh, those are 2 words kids absolutely hate. I don't think biologically we're designed to do that when you think about it.
Mhm. You're so right. And what's fascinating about children, I know many of the truckers will have their own children. I learned some are even homeschooling children on the rig. But what's fascinating with children is that indeed, if you get them to do that 500 steps, to do that quarter of a mile before going into school, and then they take their hardest subject, and in this experiment, it was math. If they do that quarter mile walk run, they in fact will do better on their math homework and tests shortly thereafter, because we have a lot of research that shows when we move, when we are physically active, walking or jogging, we will be more creative after the movement. So another thing for the truckers is to think about, if you have a problem and you're trying to brainstorm solutions, a good time to do that would be on your break when you're on one of these walks, because we know that it increases creativity. Movement increases creativity.
Interesting. I'm also
Mhm.
a writer. I've actually had some of my most brilliant ideas when I'm cleaning.
Mhm.
Cleaning the
Fascinating.
house. Isn't that crazy?
No, it makes a lot of sense, I'll tell you, Shelley, because you're moving.
Hmm.
By definition, you're cleaning. So you're moving your arms, your legs, you're moving around. Likely you're moving all limbs, actually. And
Hmm.
also you're letting your default network in your brain go, meaning it doesn't take a lot of intellectual power to do that cleaning, right? So your mind is just what we call wandering. And when
Hmm.
it can do this wandering, it often does come up with these brilliant ideas. So I'm not surprised by that at all. And you probably have a very clean house.
When I'm doing that, yeah. So I have self-satisfaction along with it. So I love this information. We do have to go to break here, though, and I'd like to get into more detail on the various pillars that you're talking about so
Mhm.
our drivers can achieve a healthy lifestyle. We're talking with Dr. Elizabeth Frates. She's a lifestyle medicine expert. You're listening to the Truckers Network radio show here on tncradio.live. Stay tuned for more coming up. The Truckers Network helps professional drivers save money and makes their lives easier. We were created for drivers by a commercial driver. We know the industry and driver needs. A Truckers Network membership offers exclusive discounts through our trusted partners on things like truck care, truck parking, tires, oil changes, fuel additives, fitness, roadside assistance, first aid kits, driver training, and a whole lot more. Start saving today. Check us out at app.thetruckersnetwork.net. That's app.thetruckersnetwork.net. The trucking industry keeps America running thanks to the 3.36 million professional truck drivers who deliver everyday goods to 80% of American communities who rely on trucking for that last mile. The industry represents a diverse group with nearly half of drivers at 42% as minorities. Trucking Moves America Forward, or TMAF, educates the public on the essentiality of trucking by telling the story of trucking and its positive impact on our economy, communities, and lives. Learn how you can join the industry movement by visiting truckingmovesamerica.com. Welcome back to the Truckers Network radio show on tncradio.live. I'm your host, Shelley Johnson. I'm talking with lifestyle medicine expert, Dr. Elizabeth Frates. Dr. Frates, you mentioned in the previous segment some of the pillars of lifestyle medicine. I thought maybe we could explore them in more detail so that our drivers can really get a handle on that.
I'd love to do that. So one of my favorite pillars is physical activity. We already talked about how important it is to get moving when you're on your breaks. I will share with you that all of these pillars, the 6 pillars, have evidence-based guidelines. That means they are rooted in research. So I'm not coming out of these guidelines with just what I think or from thin air, or no, these are from research studies looking at humans and how they can avoid those chronic conditions we talked about: heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, dementia. Okay, so for physical activity, the guidelines are to accumulate 150 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity, which can include walking, every week. So that's about a half an hour, 5 days a week. You can do this in bouts of 5 minutes. That's what the research shows. This doesn't have to be a half hour at a time. You could do 5 minutes 4 times in a day, and then say that for that day you accumulated 20 minutes. And ultimately, we're looking for that 150 minutes. If you want to do more, research shows you can go up to 300 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity. But beyond that, hasn't been shown to give much benefit to the body and brain. Alternatively, as a trucker, you may have a day off. In that day off, you could do 120 minutes, and that would count. That'll count for your 120 minutes, and likely you've done 5-minute bouts 6 other times in the week. So you could get yourself up to that 150. It's a good goal. It's a good guideline. We all strive for it. I do. My physician colleagues strive for it. And then in terms of nutrition, if you're a trucker and you're listening to the radio, I don't know what different stations are sharing with you. I'm going to give you again the evidence-based guidelines. I'm going to give you the guidelines from research. What we do know in order to avoid these chronic conditions is that we want to have plants. We want to have vegetables. We want to have fruits. We want to have whole grains. And we do need protein. You can get protein from nuts, seeds, legumes, tofu. You can also get it from fish, poultry. Now, processed red meat, now, please, I'm the messenger. The message on processed red meat is it causes cancer. So that's bacon and sausages and hot dogs. And those are carcinogenic. And that's a fact by the American Cancer Society. I don't understand why we don't talk about this more, but I'm just sharing with you that message. There are many, many alternatives to these processed red meats. There's, again, the nuts, seeds, legumes, beans.
Sure.
There's fish. There's poultry.
Is it from the nitrates in the processing of that meat? Okay.
Yes.
Now, so if you can lean toward nitrate free, is that okay?
That's a little bit better. Sure. Mm-hmm. That's a little bit better. Processed foods in general. So so without the nitrates, it's better, but we want to get to the consumption of whole food. So something that's as close to the ground as possible, that isn't full of salt, sugar, and fat. When we have processed foods full of salt, sugar, and fat, we tend to call those hyperpalatables. That means they taste so good, they hit our reward system in our brain, and we want more and more and more of them. They're not very satiating, meaning they don't help us to feel full. So we want to think about consuming foods that help us to nourish our body, to prevent cancer, to prevent heart disease, and also are delicious and satisfying. They fill us. So one of the things I also must say is that red meat, it is a source of saturated fat. You know that I am focused on heart disease. So saturated fat is a risk factor for heart disease. Increased saturated fat. It increases the cholesterol in our system, the saturated fat does. And that puts us at risk for heart disease. So I must share this news with you because, well, my dad ate a lot of red meat prior to his heart attack and stroke. And it's not just me and the experience of my dad when I was 18. This is the research now that's in the New England Journal of Medicine and in Lancet and many of our premier medical journals that connect red meat with heart disease. So what are you going to do if you're a trucker and you're listening to me? Hopefully you haven't switched the station, because stay tuned, because there are options. One, you can cut down on the red meat. You can start putting a little poultry in. You can think about a fish meal, and you can even play around with having some tofu or beans or chickpeas, something a little bit different. I want to emphasize why we talk about fruits and vegetables. For example, the apple. This is something I know you can pack on your truck. And you could put a little cashew butter, peanut butter, if you'd like, on it to give it a little protein. But why do I talk about an apple? Because if you think about the skin, that's going to help you get insoluble fiber so your bowels will go smoothly each day, which we all want. And also this helps prevent colon cancer. That is one of our cancers that's killing us. And we need to get our prevention screenings and our colonoscopies, but we also need to be eating foods that are filled with fiber, like the apple and the skin. Now, inside the apple is the pulp, soluble fiber that lowers our cholesterol naturally. You don't need a statin for that. If you are on a statin and you have high cholesterol, you need to take your statin. But another way to help your own body is to have an apple. Now, apples
Mhm.
can be absolutely delicious. Look,
Mhm.
there are different colors. Experiment, try them in the different seasons, and be open-minded with your apple selection. Try a yellow one, try a green one, try a red one, and do your own taste test. They have antioxidants in them. Quercetin is one. This does help
Mhm.
us to prevent cancer. So it's important. Now, the other thing about vegetables and fruits is that the different colors indicate the different phytonutrients, the nutrients inside these plants. These nutrients, these phytonutrients, are the ones that have the power to prevent disease. So you talk about a rainbow on the plate, but do you know why? It's because each and every color has a different antioxidant that will be powerful to prevent heart disease, diabetes, cancer, stroke. So thinking about, if you have a crock pot, there are so many great ways to put in veggies into that crock pot. You could do white bean soup, minestrone soup. There are so many tasty soups
Mhm.
that you can add your veggies into. Honestly, I find soups delicious, and I know you can do this. A butternut squash, farro chili type of meal, it's delicious. So thinking about getting 5 servings of fruit and vegetable, not 5 of fruits and 5 of vegetables. You could do 3 vegetables, 2 fruits. Get some berries in there too. That's good for the brain and preventing dementia. So if you can get 5 servings, that's a recommendation. 5 servings. Say 3 veggies, 2 fruits a day.
Mhm.
You can lower your risk of our number one killer, heart disease, by 20%. So you know that I'm on this. You know, with my family history of heart disease, I am looking at how many fruits and vegetables I can consume each day. The other really important part is feeling full and feeling just satisfied. You get this feeling not from cookies, not from cakes. It doesn't give you satiety, is what we call it. So a feeling of fullness. These things don't give you a feeling of fullness. They give you a high, a sugar high. Then you go sugar low, and then you want a roller coaster back up to that sugar high. And they keep you going up and down and up and down. But when you get something like a whole grain, so a brown rice or a whole grain pasta or whole grain bread, and maybe you have a protein with it, say a peanut butter, and then what happens is your stomach distends, because one of the best drinks you can have is water. So hydrating yourself throughout the day as you're driving your rig, having water by your side, at least 8 ounce glasses of water, will really help you, your system, your mentation, your cognition, the way how quickly you can react and think on the road, very important for truckers. And it also serves to make you feel full. Why? Because stomach distension, when your stomach gets big with water or with the fiber from fruits, vegetables, and whole grains, it distends your stomach, makes your stomach bigger. And that gives you the signal to your brain, I'm full. I feel
Mhm.
full. I feel good. I feel satisfied.
Right.
That's how you can get yourself feeling satisfied. And making some small swaps is really all it takes, and a little bit of planning. So if you can make a stop and you can get to a store that does have a banana, has some berries. By the way, even frozen berries and frozen vegetables can work. So you have that crock pot, you can put frozen broccoli, peas, cauliflower in that crock pot. Frozen is fine. It has phytonutrients in it as well. It does not lose all its nutrients, and it does not lose its fiber.
It's better than canned?
Canned, I worry about the salt.
Okay. Yep.
And I worry about the salt. So if you can wash it off, put in a strainer and wash it off and get the salt off, that could be okay. Canned in general, I worry about salt. Salt leads to high blood pressure, high salt. Now, the way we counteract that is we have high potassium. What does that mean? Fruits and vegetables have potassium in them. And this
Mhm.
is why when people have high blood pressure, their doctors put them on something called the DASH diet, dietary approaches to stop hypertension. What's that diet? Well, it's full of fruits and vegetables and whole grains. It does, of course, allow for a little bit of fish, poultry, but it is rich in the fruits and vegetables, because that's where the potassium is. And when you have high
Mhm.
potassium, you lower your sodium. So the canned foods are easy on the road. I get that. I understand that. And so are the packaged potato chips, easy on the road. My goodness, people eat potato chips. They're not just truckers looking for an easy fix, right? That's just
Sure.
regular folks, not truckers. We also go for those same salty chips, but they
Sure.
really do not add value, and they add salt, which will increase our risk for high blood pressure. So better choices, if you can, are carrots and hummus, celery and hummus. And there are kale chips. If you get them without salt, you may like those. They could be surprisingly good for you. So just give it open mind, give it a try.
Yeah.
But these
It may
two
sound funny, but it tastes good, right? Yeah.
exactly,
Mm.
Shelley. And these two pillars are key: exercise and nutrition. But that's not all we're talking about. We mentioned the stress, and it is recommended that we spend 20 minutes a day. Now, this could be 5 minutes, different times of the day, where you're doing some deep breathing. Before you go to sleep, you could spend 5-10 minutes deep breathing, and that'll get you in that relaxation response. So this stress reduction we already discussed is critical, and it is one of our pillars in the moment to utilize that deep breathing, but also to practice it maybe
Right.
before you're eating your breakfast or your lunch, or maybe when you're online or you're waiting for your food at a restaurant, just to spend a little bit of time deep breathing, because it'll put you in rest and digest, so you can actually digest those nutrients that you're about to uh, enjoy in your delicious and nutritious meal that you're having.
Get the
The other
benefit
is
of your food. We do have to go to break. I did have a
sure,
quick question,
sure.
because you were talking about the importance of fiber and all of that to keep our bowels moving.
Yes.
Can constipation increase the risk of cancer? Because you were saying that a healthy colon is one that obviously functions well. Is
Yeah.
constipation a bad thing? Because drivers, I'm sure, suffer from that.
Right. Constipation is uncomfortable, and it can cause a lot of distress,
Hmm.
both uh, gastrointestinal, stomach distress, as well as mental, honestly,
Right.
mental stress, because it is painful and disturbing. So the reason why we want to try to address it and address it early and get on a regular system for bowels. So in the morning, by the way, a little caffeine, a little coffee in the morning often does help us go
Hmm.
as well. You may have noted that on your own. And routine bowel movements are healthy.
Hmm.
Will it cause cancer? Well, I don't think we're coming to that conclusion. What we do want, though, is if you're eating fruits, vegetables, and whole grains, you are not likely to be constipated.
Right.
The diet that's associated with constipation is one that is full of processed foods, processed red meats. These diets that don't have fiber and water. So again, your vegetables are full of water and fiber, both, as well as the phytonutrients. Those diets themselves, yes, that those are associated with cancer, as we talked about. A diet that is
Right.
rich in processed red meat and low in fruits and vegetables. And that happens to be a diet that is connected with constipation.
Sure.
So it's a lot to think about, but I think it's also straightforward in that one of the best things you can do is add fruits and vegetables and fiber to your meals. And if you've got that crock pot, you can do this relatively easily, and you can do it with frozen vegetables, and you could even have frozen fruit with, say, a yogurt. I happen to have cashew yogurt, almond yogurt. I know others like their low fat yogurt, but if you, instead of getting the sugar laden ones, yogurt, if you get a plain yogurt and you put the frozen berries in it, it's really tasty. I don't know if you've ever tried it, but it is really, really good. So
Hmm.
that's
Yeah.
another option. And those
Sure.
berries will help you go, and they're also good for anti-cancer.
Well, the reason I wanted to bring that up because I know that drivers don't like to have to stop to go to the
I see.
bathroom, so they will limit how much they drink, all of the above, which is another stress on the system, which is not a good thing. They need
Yes.
to have proper elimination, like it or not. So
Yes.
I thought that I'd have you talk about the importance and why it's good for our system so that they'll say,
Yes.
okay, I guess we have to do this.
Yes,
um,
yes, you really
yeah.
do. You
Mm-hmm.
really do you must eliminate.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Yes.
and do so routinely. And dehydration is very unhealthy for the
Yep.
body and the brain. You don't
Sure.
think as quickly, and you all need to be thinking as quickly as possible. You
Yep.
need to be as sharp as the surgeons. I mean, I'm putting you, I also work tightly with surgeons. I'm putting you in that category where you're making split-second decisions
Mm-hmm.
every
Yep.
day, all day on the road. So you need to be mentally there,
That's
and
right.
hydration is critical. Mind you, dehydration and thirst is often confused with hunger. So people who are actually very thirsty end up eating a ton of food, and often it's hyperpalatals, meaning those foods that are processed full of sugar, fat, and salt, and they eat all of that, and it does not satiate because they are looking for water. Their
Sure.
body
Yep.
wants water.
Yep.
So you want to be behind that rig. You want to
Mm-hmm.
be mentally there, feeling satisfied, and really focused and
Makes
enjoying
sense.
the ride.
That's right. Well, I want to go into the rest of the pillars here in our next break. We do have to go to
Sure.
break here. You're listening to the Truckers Network radio show here on TNCradio.live. We're talking with lifestyle medicine expert Dr. Elizabeth Frates. She's got some terrific information. Stay tuned for more coming up. TNCradio.live is proud to carry the Steve Summers Overnight Drive Show. TNCradio.live is dedicated to commercial drivers. We offer the news, traffic, and weather you need, and the entertainment, sports, talk, music, and celebrity interviews you want to hear 24/7. We have original shows and trucker podcasts that feature some of your favorites, like Ice Road Alex Debogorski and America's Truckin' Sweetheart Marcia Campbell. TNCradio.live is convenient and designed for professional drivers. The best part is we're free, and you can listen anywhere you are on the road. With just one tap, you can tune into Steve Summers and us right on your phone. Simply download our app by going to app.tncradio.live. That's app.tncradio.live. Welcome back to the Truckers Network radio show here on TNCradio.live. I'm Shelley Johnson, and I'm talking with lifestyle medicine expert Dr. Elizabeth Frates. Dr. Frates, you were discussing some of the pillars of the lifestyle medicine that include eating fruits and veggies and breathing, as well as some exercise. What are some of the other pillars that drivers need to know about and should follow for good health?
Terrific. So those are going to be sleep, social connection, and avoidance of risky substances. Before I head there, I need to follow up on something that you asked and astutely inquired about. And I am all about the research and the data. I'm here at Harvard Medical School, so we look at the data all the time. So in our short break, looked at cancer and constipation. And I
Mm-hmm.
did find one study. There is a study from 2019 that we want to pay attention to. So it is possible, this study is showing patients with constipation, I'm reading the conclusions right here and now. Patients with constipation had increased short-term risk of a diagnosis of GI cancer. Beyond
Oh,
1 year of follow-up, a moderately elevated risk persisted only for GI cancers other than colorectal cancer. The risk of non-GI cancers was elevated only during the first year of follow-up, particularly for ovarian cancer.
oh,
Interesting.
wow.
So there
Yeah.
you go. There is some data that may connect constipation in and of itself
Okay.
with cancer. Now, the exact connection, as I was saying, is it going to be what the diet, how people are eating, what they're eating, that they're not voiding? But anyway, it's a very good point to make that when you're considering keeping yourself constipated, you have to think to yourself, but this could be putting me at increased risk for a cancer.
Yeah.
Interesting. Now,
Mm-hmm.
cancer is also connected to lifestyle behaviors that we've talked about. And in terms of sleep, when we are sleep insufficient, so we do not get enough sleep. It's also called sleep deprivation. That's lack of sleep. Well, what does it mean? Less than 6 hours puts you in a sleep deprivation category. So if you came to Harvard Medical School and you said, I just slept 5.5 hours, they'd say, okay, you go in the sleep deprived arm of the study. Now, what we're shooting for is 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. And then you would be in the adequate sleep arm of the study.
Okay.
So we want to focus in on 7 hours, 7 to 8 hours. If you can get 9 and your body's comfortable with 9, great. But above that, interestingly, when you get into the 10 hours of sleep, that actually puts you at risk for heart disease. So
Huh.
this,
Wow.
yes, when we think about heart disease, we're really focusing in on 7 to 9 hours. And that's also for diabetes and high blood pressure. We want to get this adequate amount of sleep. Mind you, as a trucker, this sleep is essential for you to drive the rig and drive it safely. Driving while drowsy is, again, something that we in medicine, when we were on call and we were residents, we were causing a lot of those driving while drowsy accidents. We've changed our ways now in medicine so that residents aren't up the hours that they used to be up serving the hospital. And now for truckers, you need to know that if you are sleep deprived, your reaction time is reduced. They've studied this actually in truckers, and they've studied this in surgeons. This is why there's really such a parallel between the two of you.
Mm-hmm.
And when you are only getting 18 hours of sleep, your reaction time, when you are up for 18 hours, so you're only getting that 6 hours of sleep, your reaction time is reduced. So you want to reach the 7, 8, 9 hour mark for your day-to-day life, not just to prevent you from getting these chronic conditions we've already talked about. So it's important that you prioritize your sleep. Now, how are you going to do this? What we recommend is, I know some of you are probably sleeping in the rig, in the bed there, and hopefully it's comfortable. We want it to be quiet, cool, and dark. So I don't know how you're controlling your temperature there, but what we know medically is to have the bedroom 60 to 70 degrees. Sweet spot is 67 degrees. And that helps with a drop in core body temperature, which is a signal for sleep. So this will help you fall asleep if you can get your bedroom, wherever that is, in your rig or elsewhere, at the temperature of about 67 degrees. You do want to use a mask, an eye mask, if there's light that's getting in to the bedroom, to the rig. You want it dark and you want it quiet. If you have to use white noise, use white noise. Pink noise, that's a waterfall or rain, something like that. That will help you get to sleep, stay asleep. The other things to factor in are blue wavelength light. If you're finished driving and you want to watch your videos or TV shows or whatever you may be doing on your screen, that's going to allow blue wavelength light into your pineal gland in your brain. Why do you care about that? Because the pineal gland releases melatonin, and as you well know, melatonin helps you fall asleep. So you either need to get blue wavelength blocking glasses or an app that blocks the blue wavelength light from your screen, whatever that may be, your phone, your iPad, your computer, whatever you're using. So it's really important to take into consideration the blue wavelength light in your life. The other thing is caffeine. Now, again, just like doctors, surgeons, and truckers, right? We are trying to do the superhuman tasks, and so we use caffeine to stay up all night. Now, if you do that, you are going to have trouble, obviously, sleeping. Caffeine, what it does is it connects to a receptor in our brain, the same receptor that adenosine connects to. Why do you care? Adenosine builds up throughout the day and helps us fall asleep. By 11 p.m., we have a high level of adenosine, and that helps us to fall asleep. If you have caffeine at 3 p.m., half of it is in your system 6 hours later, which would be 9 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
Half of that is in your system 6 hours later. It has what's called a half-life of 4 to 6 hours. So the point is, if you have caffeine after 3 p.m., it will be very hard to fall asleep at 11 p.m. Can't really have it after 3 p.m. if you want to have a good night's sleep that night, starting at 11 p.m. Look, I drink a cup of coffee. It has phytonutrients. It's a plant. I have a cup of coffee or two in the morning at 8. And that
Mm-hmm.
helps me. It helps many people be up and focused and energetic and ready to go. Sometimes people have it at noon, an iced tea or something. And that can work for people, and they can still fall asleep nicely at 11 p.m. You just need to understand the pharmacokinetics of caffeine. You just need to understand that it will prevent you from falling asleep, not just in that moment, but it lasts. It has a half-life. Half of it's in your system 4 to 6 hours later. So just be aware of that. Make your choices so that you understand how this caffeine will impact your ability to fall asleep and stay asleep. The other issue is napping. So we do want the 7 full hours in a row because we want the variety of the stages of sleep throughout the night. You know, there's REM sleep and non-REM sleep. Our brain needs both to clear wastes and to consolidate memories. So it's important to get the full 7 hours if you can. If you need a nap, a half-hour nap before 3 p.m. can be useful, and it will not interrupt your nighttime sleep. Now, if you're falling asleep at the wheel and you feel yourself, look, I fell asleep at the wheel after a surgery rotation in medical school at Stanford, and I woke up in a place I didn't know how I got there. But anyway, no
Wow.
one got hurt. Everything was fine. But I knew I shouldn't be behind that wheel. You know, we all know when our eyes are heavy. You must pull over. You must pull over and take a 20-minute nap. Get a nap in and then get back on the road. It is simply not worth it. It is simply just not worth it. So that's probably one of the most important things I can share with you now. And if you have a buddy, you need to tell your buddy, I have to pull over. We got to switch right now. I'm falling asleep.
Mm-hmm.
So that's critical in terms of sleep and what we call sleep hygiene. And if you are going to make a long trip, you know, look, you have the information. I've shared with you the information. You know about reaction time reducing. If you're not getting the 7 to 9 hours, even if you just have 6 hours, your reaction time is lowered. Same with surgeons. So you need to think about that
Sure.
as you proceed.
Now, you also talked about social as well as eliminating bad habits. We've got about 3 or 4 minutes at the most, so
Perfect.
I wanted
We
you
can
to
do it.
touch on that.
Yeah, we can do it. Social connections, it's really important to connect with a loved one, and the recommendations are once a day in a meaningful way, on the phone, talking, if you can face to face, maybe FaceTime. This is important for our health. Lack of social connection is connected to heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, and all the chronic conditions we talked about. So prioritizing your social connections, even when you're on the road, making the time to connect with your loved one is really, really powerful. Now, we need to quit smoking. If you're smoking, you need to work with your physician and work on quitting. If you're drinking, American Heart Association says if you don't drink, don't start. If you do drink, limit to 2 drinks a night for a man or 1 drink a night for a woman. It's important for you to get the information in this. I am the messenger. We know now with data from medical literature that alcohol is carcinogenic. If you're worried about cancer, it was just published in January 2023. If you're worried about cancer, there is no amount of alcohol that is safe.
Wow.
So this is this is news. I read the research in 2015. I've been sharing that alcohol is connected with cancer for 8 years. And then in January 2023, it came out. If you are worried about cancer, there is no amount that is safe. I am the messenger. You do with what the information you do with the information I shared. You do what you want with it, but I'd like you to have it and be empowered so you can make educated choices.
Sure.
I hope some of this was useful. I do hope that you can live a happy, healthy life for many, many years to come, 80 and beyond. That's my hope for you. You're fully functional and thriving.
Absolutely. This is tremendous information. Dr. Frates, where can people find you on the internet?
Terrific. So I do have a website, BethFratesMD.com, and I am on Twitter at BethFratesMD, and on Instagram, BethFrates.md, and on LinkedIn, a Beth Frates as well. So I don't think it's hard to find me, but BethFratesMD.com will lead you to all the other ways as well. And thank you so much, Shelley, for having me and allowing me to share some of my passion with your truckers.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. This is really insightful. And I
Thank
hope some listeners say, I think I need to listen to her. And this is great. And they can look you up and look at some of the materials you've also written. Just a wealth of information. Thank you again. This has been helpful for our drivers.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to the Truckers Network radio show here on TNCRadio.live. Stay tuned for more great information, entertainment, and anything else you need as a driver coming up. Thank you for listening to another great interview on TNCRadio.live and the Truckers Network radio show. All of the material you hear on TNCRadio.live, on our website, our broadcasts, or our podcasts are copyrighted. There can be no distribution without the express consent of TNCRadio.live and its partners. For inquiries, write us at info@tncradio.live. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast of the Truckers Network radio show.